Hello, and in this episode of Tripod, the audio advertising podcast, we give you 5 minutes of invaluable information about one of the 3 audio media choices, linear radio. Okay, so we're now going to delve into each type of audio media one by one and just explain how to use it, how to leverage it to the advertiser's best advantage, and what to use it for. So let's start with traditional linear radio, live radio, as we discussed earlier. So what's available in terms of live radio, and how do we use it? I mean, there's national stations, there are regional stations, there are local stations, and now community stations as well. There's a lot of ways that we can target live radio audiences in that.
Okay, live radio is probably best at driving your scale and awareness effectively from an advertising point of view. Now, that can be from a national point of view. Obviously, I work with most of my clients tend to be large spending national clients who are looking for that awareness level across the UK. But, we will do stuff for potentially for retail clients in terms of local store openings and things like that. So you're simulating the same sort of circumstances on a local level as what you are on a national level in terms of like what the kind of like opportunity is for the advertiser. From a national level, yes, you are looking at driving large scale reach, and part of that is driving frequency as well, message across the day to make sure that you are reaching people at different times across the day and that people are hearing your advert a lot of times to create that awareness, obviously, in their head. You take that to, that's similar, that's the same circumstances or objectives you're probably be putting into place, even if you're doing a local regional store opening, aren't you? Because you're effectively just looking at that kind of that region, that town, that city, and trying to replicate that model in terms of like, right, here's a lot of scale, talking about this store is opening or something's happening in the local area this time, and we want to make as many people aware of it as possible in that local area. So I think that's kind of like where linear radio sort of really sits in terms of for how most of our advertisers use it. Obviously, on the other sort of side of things is probably like live radio partnership. Large scale partnership solutions that are relatively easy to implement from an advertising point of view. So if you want to talk to an audience, work with certain presenters, look for that kind of presenter endorsement. And that obviously allows them to be more ingrained within the station, have more of a connection of core listeners.
Walk me through some of the things that they could do in specific terms.
Well, I suppose in terms of if you're looking kind of more partnership stuff, it's not just the on-air element anymore. Obviously, you've got an on-air element, which will be sponsorship messages, live reads, presenter endorsement reads. So that's ramping up your kind of like your connection to the radio station and ramping up your frequency of message in terms of an advertiser. But then there's also the other things they can do around the edge in terms of connecting with the listener. So that can be through, the thousands of people they have that come to kind of radio station social feeds now. That can be through the radio weapons station's website in terms of bringing in station talent to create specific video content, for example, that allows the kind of like the client to own that kind of content and seed that out across their own social and stuff like this. So I think, that can be within like bigger events that are part of the station and how you get involved in that. So actually having your brand or your product on the ground at these events and things like that. So live radio still offers those kind of like amazing things. But I think on both perspectives now, I think it is probably when we look at it and we think of spot advertising on live radio, or we think of partnership on live radio, I do think we associate that with driving scale.
Yeah. And on spot advertising, many a new advertiser will come out with the question, how many spots am I going to get? It's not about the number of spots, Howard. It's more about the quality of the airtime, isn't it?
Yes.
In terms of, just explain what I mean by quality of airtime.
So it's where the audience is listening. So to give an example, you could have 5 spots at between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, which may give you an audience size. We may reach 10 people. We've had 5 spots. But conversely, you could have 1 spot at breakfast time, say, sort of mid-morning at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:30 or 10:15, and you might reach 25 people. So you've only had 1 spot versus the 5. So it's not about the quantity, it's the quality. And we know through the research systems that we have when people are listening to the radio, and therefore we optimize campaigns for where their audience is listening throughout the day. So simple terms, I hope that explains that. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of where you place them.
And we talked about, Tom, you talked about repetition being an important aspect. And there's a phrase called OTH, which is opportunities to hear. Can you explain that in very, very easy to understand terms?
Okay, here we go. As you say, opportunities to hear, which is frequency, which means how many times the average listener will hear your message over a week. And there are benchmarks, industry norms that benchmark an OTH or a frequency between lightweight, medium weight and heavyweight. So it's about how many times the person will hear your message determines the weight of the campaign for radio stations. But, there are different schools of thought, but that's really what it means.
Trisonic's Howard Bareham and Tom Balaam from Mindshare on Linear Radio. In our next episode, it's digital audio. Hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss that. And for more, visit trisonic.co.uk.